Powerlifting is a simple sport. Load heavy bar, lift heavy bar, and try not to tear your muscles and try not to die trying. The person building the highest total across the squat, bench press, and deadlift will win the competition. Between you and me, there are much more competitive athletes than myself. I want to improve and beat my previous 1-rep maxes, and if that means I outperform someone in my weight class, so be it. If you're like me, then you know how intimidating it can be to load up a weight that you've never lifted before and then try to successfully lift it in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people. Maybe not thousands, I'm not that good. Today, I want to teach you how to overcome your fears and hesitations by teaching you 4 science-backed strategies. Before I teach you about the 4 strategies that will significantly increase your 1-rep max, we must recognize that strength is specific to the exercises, rep ranges, sets, the environment we train in, and even our psychological state on any given day. Strength needs context. After 5 weeks of implementing this training protocol, let's pretend that you train squats once weekly for 1 set of 6 at RPE 8, and your PR is 100 kilos for 6 at RPE 8. That's the best you've ever done. After 5 weeks of implementing this training protocol, you lift 130 kilograms for 6 reps at RPE 8. Does this mean that you're stronger now? Well, yeah, of course you are. You're lifting more weight and you're performing 6 repetitions without increasing your RPE. So by all accounts, you're stronger. However, as powerlifters, we are most concerned with our 1-rep max strength, not our 6-rep max strength, unfortunately. I know some of you in the comments are gonna be mad. In this scenario, did your 1-rep max improve by 30 kilos in the same way that your 6-rep max improved? Unfortunately, or fortunately for some of you, the only way to find out is to test your 1-rep max. Yeah, we have 1-rep max calculators that help us to predict our 1-rep max based on our other rep maxes. Unfortunately, these calculators don't consider your individual strength transference. Strength transference is your ability to transfer strength from one rep range, exercise variation, or environmental circumstance to another. In this case, your ability to transfer your 6-rep max strength to your 1-rep max performance. We care about your ability to transfer your 6-rep max performance to your 1-rep max performance. For example, I work with a lifter, let's call her Sarah, who can bench 110 kilograms for 8 repetitions around RPE 8. However, their 1-rep max hovers around 120 to 130 kilos. This means that 110 kilos is around 85% of their 1 repetition max on any given day, depending on how well they implement the 4 strategies that I'm going to teach you by the end of this video. I work with another athlete, let's call him Steven, who cannot lift even 75% of their 1-rep max for 8 repetitions. So why is there such a difference between these 2 athletes? Because their strength transference is different. Their ability to lift singles and perform high repetitions is worse than Sarah. However, their ability to perform 1-rep maxes is actually better, relatively speaking. Yes, we are all humans, and while we share 99% of the DNA, it's that 1% that makes us different. Strength is specific to the imposed demands of the athlete's task and the individual's biological, psychological, and sociological responses to that task, and in this case, the squat, bench press, and deadlift. And I know it sounds complicated, and it is, but even without a PhD in psychology or biology, we can implement these 4 simple concepts to help you maximize your 1-rep max no matter your strength transference. Strategy number 1, increase your task-specific hypertrophy. The first strategy is to design your training program in a way that helps you to build task-specific hypertrophy. According to an article published in the Journal of Applied Sport Physiology and Performance, by focusing on task-specific hypertrophy, achieving an optimal amount of hypertrophy may be possible while de-emphasizing the metabolic and aerobic components often associated with high-volume bodybuilding training. So what does this mean and why is it important? Well, the fatigue generated from high-rep, high-volume training and the specific muscle fiber types used differ from when we train at low rep ranges and higher relative intensities. So the specific adaptations that we make when we perform high-rep 8 to 20 repetition sets may not be as valuable as the adaptations that we make with low-rep sets, say 1 to 7 repetitions around RPE 8. So, If you want to maximize your 1 rep max, then most of your work should be in the 1 to 7 rep range, and we should perform exercises similar to the squat, bench press, and deadlift. Of course, there's some nuance here, and there's a spectrum of specificity that's important, and there are always going to be use cases for pretty much every exercise in a powerlifter's program, depending on the context. We'll talk about how to build an effective training program in a later video. This leads us to the second strategy to maximize your 1 rep max: competitive practice. The main difference between your performance in training and competition is the amount of pressure applied. Some lifters thrive under pressure, while other lifters perform poorly. If you're part of that group that doesn't like the pressure and doesn't like a lot of people looking at them, then your performance might also suffer in competition. So to combat this, we can simulate meet day scenarios as a regular part of your training routine. My favorite way to simulate meet conditions with my athletes is by planning what's called mock meet. You've probably heard of these, but they are training sessions that simulate a powerlifting competition, but without all the lights, judges, and screaming fans. I wish. I think there are fans that scream for me in my head, but really it's just me screaming and everyone looks at me like I'm crazy. But for the athletes I coach, I try to implement mock meets at the end of important training blocks or whenever they feel comfortable to implement them. When we implement a mock meet, I prepare meet cards just like I would in competition so that they can plan their warm-ups and attempt selections just like on game day. In theory, this will prepare them for the process and flow of competition without the financial expense and stress of competing. A simpler and more common strategy to implement or to simulate game day scenarios is through what I call pre-lift visualization during your standard training session. So before a heavy top set, close your eyes and imagine what it feels like to lift that weight. Imagine what it will feel like to push through a training plateau, and visualize yourself succeeding, or visualize the pressures of competition. Visualize the people are around you and there's lights in front of you. At first, this might not be great. At first, this might actually distract you and worsen your performance. However, the more that you embrace visualization in your training, the easier it will be to overcome any adverse emotional or physical reactions, and eventually your 1 rep max will skyrocket. You have to practice. It's not going to be easy. When I first tried this, it was uncomfortable. You're going to feel discomfort. But if you only experience discomfort when you show up at the most important day of your training career, that's not ideal for performance. So we want to get you comfortable with that feeling and then perform well anyway. You might not ever feel good in competition, but if you practice the feeling of discomfort as part of your training, your ability to express your strength when it matters will improve. You've got to trust me on this one. But this is also basic sports psychology in a concept called exposure therapy. Part of exposure therapy can just be visualizing the experience. Or you can simulate it closely as possible by having your friends show up to the gym every day and put all the pressure on you as possible. The third strategy to maximize your 1 rep max performance is technical proficiency. To increase your technical proficiency, we must determine the appropriate dose of high-intensity, competition-specific training to maximize your 1 rep max strength on the squat, bench press, and deadlift. This will help you to develop the skill of performing these movements. Not all training intensities challenge your technique in the same way. So if all of your training is sub 80% work and you have no clue what it feels like to nearly fail or train close to failure at low repetitions from 1 to 5 reps, that's a problem. Because we're powerlifters. We need to know the feeling of grinding, because it's not the same as cranking out some high repetitions at low intensity. Trust me, I almost did it yesterday. Damn near failed. I see this occasionally with my athletes. If we train at too low intensities and we shift the intensity higher, the performance doesn't improve because it's challenging and they're not used to that challenge. But interestingly, you may only need a bit of high intensity technique practice to experience actual 1 rep max improvements through increasing your technical proficiency. Each lifter will require a different dose of technical training, of high intensity technique work. Because if you do too much of it, it can burn you out and make you feel discomfort that might lead to a lack of motivation, and then your training just doesn't go well. For myself, I tend to only need 3 to 4 weeks of singles at RPE 7 to 8 to observe rapid progress in my technique and my 1 rep max. For example, in February of 2022, my 1 rep max squat improved by 30 kilograms at only 4 weeks, simply by including singles at RPE 8 into my training after after many months of performing sets of 5, 4, and 3 at RPE 8 for my top sets. I recommend maintaining a scientific approach when writing your programs because there's always a variable or two that we could modify to make better gains and to improve that technical efficiency. Don't stop exploring new strategies, new exercises, and new training protocols to maximize your technical proficiency, but hopefully this gives you a good idea on the differences between low intensity, low RPE training and why it's important to challenge yourself and your technique to simulate that meet day 1 rep max experience. The fourth strategy to maximize your 1 rep max is to manage your fatigue and recovery. One of the biggest mistakes that powerlifters make when attempting to increase their 1 rep max is to push extremely hard every session without even thinking how much fatigue that they're creating. For example, when I met my girlfriend, she didn't think a training session was good if it didn't involve her failing a lift. And when we started training, I taught her that it's okay to train a little bit further away from failure because you still get these psychological and physical adaptations that increase your ability to express strength. In some cases, powerlifters think that the point of training is to generate fatigue, and then once you build enough fatigue, you remove it, and then you're stronger. And technically you would be stronger. I mean, your fatigue drops, so your ability to express strength has improved. But fatigue actually impacts your ability to build task-specific hypertrophy, which is the #1 strategy to maximize your 1 rep max. So if fatigue negatively impacts hypertrophy and your strength expression, then we must build our training plan around our perceived fatigue level. This is challenging and it requires a lot of intuition, knowledge, and experience. But if you can learn how to listen to your body as a way to dictate the training that you have, or as Coach Tyson Eckel likes to say, train to nourish your body. And it's challenging to know, are you doing enough? I get it. But you don't need that much work to experience positive training outcomes. You don't need to hurt yourself with volume. You don't need to beat yourself up to improve. I've worked with hundreds of athletes where that's what they thought when they started working with me. And I pulled their stress down, I got them recovered, and sure enough, their 1 rep maxes started to improve with 30 to 50 to 60 less volume and stress than they were used to. So think about it like this. If fatigue impacts your ability to recruit motor units, or maybe high fatigue implies that you have a lot of damaged muscle tissue, how does that contribute to your strength gains? If you keep damaging your muscle more and more and more, your ability to access and recruit muscle fibers reduces. So think about how your body feels, and if it feels good, keep pushing. If it doesn't feel good, pull back. It's a general rule of thumb. There is an art to this, and we will never know how much fatigue that we truly carry in a given training session, but it's not really the point. The point is that you should feel good so you can perform well. If you feel good and you're excited and you're motivated and you follow the other 3 strategies to maximize your strength, then you'll have a good time. So be patient with yourself as you develop a plan and a process that helps you to maximize your 1 rep max strength. I don't have the answers that will solve everyone's problems, but these processes will help you to elicit a positive strength and hypertrophic adaptation for each session. That said, most lifters can observe great benefits by hitting just 1 to 2 challenging sets per exercise per training session. So start there and add or subtract based on your performance and how your body is feeling. Powerlifting is simple but challenging. So you can watch this video to learn about the best warm-up strategies to get the most out of each training session.